Have a seat on your porcelain throne. It's time to talk some shit on the Powell movement.
Welcome to the Powell movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and as you're listening to this intro, I'm in France. While I've always wanted to go to Chamonix, I'm in Paris. This place has never been on my list, but I'm excited to see new places. And while I'm not going to be buying and wearing a beret, I'm going to do even better by shaving a pencil-thin, French-inspired mustache. So at least I'll have the look, because I don't speak one word of the language other than voulez-vous coucher avec moi ce soir, santé, and oui. So things should be interesting over there. Good thing my kid takes French. Hopefully he can help me out. I'm planning on just acting stupid, which shouldn't be that hard for me. When I get back to the States, I will have major updates on where me and my wife are with her treatment and what the future holds for us. But no need to talk about that now, as this is her bucket list trip. Ange has been off chemo for 2.5 weeks, and while she still feels like shit, I'm hoping by at this point in our trip that her feet aren't in too much pain from all the cracking and splitting that they get from all the drugs, and that she has the energy to see all the things that she wants while we're over there. And all of this is a major question mark, so we will see what happens. But what is no question mark at all is who my guest is this week. Jessica Sobolowski-Quinn is a lifer in the ski business. From racing to eventually becoming a pro in the free skiing world, to owning and operating one of the best heli outfits in Alaska, Points North, Jess skis more powder in a season than most of us do in a lifetime. And her story is a cool one that I'm not going to spoil with this intro. What I am going to do is finish this intro up and then head to the airport to start my vacation. So my parting words to all of you before I head out on vacation is to please tell a friend about the show and share my social posts. Those things really do help the show grow. Finally, please support my incredible sponsors who make this thing happen. They are Outdoor Research, Stanley, Peter Glenn Ski and Sports, Best Day Brewing, and Elan Skis. Now, let's talk with Jess Sobolowski-Quinn. Were you into hockey or hockey players growing up, or was that something that happened later in life?
I was definitely not necessarily into hockey players. Hockey players and heli-ski owners were not even on my radar growing up, that's honest.
I'm asking that question not because you're married to a former hockey player, but because you grew up in Simsbury, Connecticut, a place that had an NHL team for a long time, or at least Hartford did. And did the Hartford Whalers leaving town have an impact on you and your childhood?
You know what, Mike? You are very good, actually. You just refreshed my memory. So all the Hartford Whalers, we were actually babysitters for their kids.
No way.
Yeah, the Hartford Whalers was a big part of our community and our life because a lot of them lived in the suburbs where I grew up in Simsbury. And I was super sad to see them leave. I've seen some of their names here and there throughout the time. Brian Marchman, I think, has a son now that plays in the NHL. But they were a great staple to our little community in Simsbury. That's for sure. And, you know, again, we all babysat their children. So that was pretty funny.
And then sports for you, it was ski racing in the Berkshire East Mountains in the winter. And then there was lacrosse and soccer. What was the most important to you when you were a kid?
You know, growing up, I feel like I had a lucky childhood. I loved my childhood. I loved my friends. My life revolved around sports. I played soccer. We were state championships for, 15 years. I was on the same soccer team with the same girls from the age of 6, 7 years old. And then same with lacrosse. We were state championships. We had a great team. But my passion was really ski racing. I was the only one at my school that ski raced. And so my parents, my mom in particular, made a huge effort to make sure I got to races, whether it was the whole tri-state area, Berkshire East, New Hampshire, Junior Olympics up in New Hampshire, Vermont. And then I got very fortunate and I went to college to ski race at a NCAA Division I. And so skiing was really the center of my world. And then the sports on each side of that season helped to make the time go by.
And it also sounds like you're one of those people that have way too much energy with everything that you do. Like you'll go ski, then you'll go for a run, then you'll go out. That's just normal for you. Where most people get tired, you don't get tired. Have you always been that way?
You know, that is a very good point. And I've been wondering lately if I maybe have some ADHD or something. But when I grew up, my dad was very athletic, as my mom. But I remember my dad every day would come home, go for a run, do something. And I just grew up being outside, and it really makes me tick. It's what makes me happy, doing something every day, cardio, being with friends. My husband laughs because he calls me the Energizer Bunny, but I never get bored of it. I remember when Ingrid used to live in Tahoe, we would go ski, then we'd go for a run, Then we go for a walk, and it would just be the trifecta day every single day when we really didn't have anything to worry about except where we were going to go rally next.
Can you think of like the most ridiculous multi-sport day that you've ever had in your life where it was just go, 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 go?
I think that'd probably be mountain bike, or when I was training for triathlons, you would go swim and then you'd go call the block. You'd go then ride your bike, then run. And those were pretty hectic, long days where I realized I don't necessarily need to be that crazy person ski touring for 5,000 hours. For me, it's now come to that point where I love doing something for an hour, hour and a half, going hard, and that satisfies me. So my days of, putting in long hours would probably be heli-skiing in the Chugach. They're very long days. You can be out there for 9 to 10 hours, really, in April when the sun gets high in the sky and it doesn't set till midnight. And then probably the days of training for the triathlons that I did. Those were pretty hectic, busy, long days of go, 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 go.
Okay. And then when you think about your childhood, what else did you do? Because you have lacrosse, soccer, and skiing. Is there gymnastics? Do you play any instruments? Do you skateboard, inline skate? What other things are you doing? Because you're one of those people that doesn't rest.
I grew up in a suburb of Connecticut. It was a great place to raise your kids, have good schools, but I definitely got lost in the school system. And so that was challenging for me. I was not a good student. My whole time revolved around how can I pass this without really understanding what I'm learning. And so I took my enjoyment exactly outside and doing that stuff. I remember my parents made me play an instrument, and I tried the oboe for a while, which again, I wasn't good at. I just tried to fake it to make it, so to say. But in terms of other stuff, I love to read, so that always kept me occupied. I have learned to come to love to bake and cook and do stuff like that, but it was definitely a more mellow pace of life than I feel like I live now with my family, just because there's not that much to do. There's not the ocean. There's not good mountain biking. It really was a suburb of Connecticut where we had great things for kids, but it's not like it is this day and age. And so there was a lot of just hang out, board time of, when I was supposed to be doing my homework and probably daydreaming about where we were going to go ski next.
Where do you go ski first? Like, what's the home mountain? Is that Stowe?
My home mountain, I grew up at Blandford. It's a little mountain in Massachusetts. It was around a 45-minute drive that we would do. And then that became challenging, and we wanted a better ski program. So I started going to Ski Sundown, which was in Connecticut, and, a little mountain, but it had a great pitch, great hill there called Gun Barrel that we used to train on. And so those were really the two steepest mountains that were in my vicinity where we could realistically get me there and make sure that I was able to train on the weekends with everybody and then after school as well.
Based on being in Connecticut and your ski racing, I would think that all the fast kids are racing in the New England series, and the slower kids, maybe not the slower kids, but the other series, the Mid-Atlantic series, is probably a little bit slower. Were you racing in that New England series, and who are the notable names that you were racing against?
I was racing. I was very fortunate. I was good, but I definitely wasn't great. I got my bum kicked quite a bit. But the one cool thing was I did race against Kirsten Clark. She actually lives out by me now, but she did become an Olympian, and she was on the U.S. ski team. And so that was good to see that people that I did race against actually did make it. I remember in college, again, we were Division I, but we were definitely down on the line of the totem pole of how we did in results. But, there was Megan Brown, there was Andy Bither. There were so many amazing, amazing ski racers that just had higher talent than I did, and also just more opportunities where I didn't go to camps in the summer and I didn't train all year round like a lot of these people did. A lot of the people didn't even speak English because they were coming from the European teams trying to make the A, B, and C team where, a lot of those college, the Dartmouths, the UVMs, the UNHs, it was a very select, and the ones on those teams were all either on the U.S. ski team for the C team or trying to make it. Now I feel honored to even have been a part of it. At the time, I felt intimidated.
Well, it sounds like when you were in high school still, we'll talk about college in a couple minutes, but it sounds like skiing was all about staying on groomed terrain and going fast. And was there any powder skiing or hitting the park or anything like that? Or were you focused on the groom runs when you're coming up?
When you're ski racing back east, you're allowed to mess around, go off the trail, but not in front of your team and not in front of your coaches. It is purely on the groomer. I didn't really powder ski until I moved out west when I was 21 years old. So no, when you're back east, when I grew up, it is all about staying on the groomers if you're on a race team. When you're goofing off with your friends, you can do whatever you want, but coaches really don't want to see you free skiing. Again, with my experience. And so I had zero experience skiing in the powder when I was growing up.
Okay. And then being that you're a three-sport athlete in high school, I'm going to assume that you're a good kid, maybe even like a jock. But assuming isn't fair, how would you describe yourself in high school? Or better yet, how would other people describe you?
I feel like I had a lot of great friends. I was friends with the popular crew. I was friends with the athletic crew, what you call jocks. And so I really loved and cherished both my sets of friends. And I tried to be nice to everyone. I'm sure some people might have called me a snob. I don't know. But I really felt lucky. I never really got picked on. I just had a great childhood experience. I mean, you go through the girl drama and stuff like that, but I definitely think I was part of the popular crew and the jock crew, and they kind of meshed together as well. And just being with the same girls for so long on the same teams. I mean, most of my friends went Division I, full scholarship to play lacrosse or soccer. And so it was definitely an area of people that all had similar interests and backgrounds. And so that was kind of neat. Like-minded people always share similar traits together. And so I feel like I really found some amazing friends growing up through high school.
And if all your friends are getting Division I scholarships for lacrosse and soccer, and you're on those teams and you guys are state champions, did you get any scholarship offers, or was it more like you were middle of the pack and just the best got scholarship offers?
I was a pretty good lacrosse player, so I could have gone to a D1 school for that. But with Division I, you can't do two sports. And so that's why I picked the school I went to. I could do Division III soccer and Division I ski racing. And so that unfortunately eliminated the lacrosse. And I did not get a scholarship to ski race or to play soccer. However, after the first year of college, I actually did get a scholarship. I did get some money for sports, and I did actually even get inducted into their Hall of Fame for sports. So that was a pretty cool thing to get. Around 5 years ago, they inducted me into their Hall of Fame.
That's incredible. So it's Johnson State College. And when I was looking at FIS results just to see how you did as a college racer, it looked like there were 2 or 3 years where you had some results in like the 40s and 50s, but there weren't like those podium positions, which makes sense because it doesn't sound like you're the kid going to those summer camps, and it doesn't sound like you're on the track to be a U.S. ski team or anything like that. You just love ski racing and it was fun. But did you go to the Hall of Fame for ski racing or for soccer or a little bit of both, or how did that happen?
It was a tiny school, and I think they honored their athletes that they had doing well and playing multiple sports. I never really asked why they chose me. Maybe, again, since it was a small school, I was like the last one on their list that all of a sudden they came to. But yeah, again, I don't know how they select their criteria. I think maybe they followed me throughout my career. And, even though you nailed it, and that's why I never try to put smoke and mirrors about how I did. But I really was one of the only ones after ski racing to enhance my career and continue skiing for a living. And it was really neat. I've, become friends with Megan Brown and Andy By. There are all these girls that I worshiped. They're my buddies now because we would meet up and do ski stuff together. And I was the one making a living off it. And they were having these desk jobs. And so it had come around full circle where we were both on the same level field of respect and just like, oh, wow, you made it as a skier. Like we just skied gates and, never really got to ski off the groomed runs. And here you are, a big mountain professional skier. How cool. And so it was more of slow and steady won the race for me on that. And so I think, that combined with the sports I played is maybe why Johnson State inducted me in their Hall of Fame. They're called University of Northern Vermont now as well.
There was a bunch of mergers I saw over the years, but I just kept going with Johnson State.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
So you graduate with a degree in hotel hospitality and management, and then you go to Hilton Head, South Carolina for an internship, and I would think that would be like a beach week summer of just fun in the sun. But was there a real chance that you could have ended up with a warm weather life, or did you know you were going to move out west after that internship?
That's right. So around my junior year, I had to pick a major. And again, my whole theme was how can I pass these classes without really understanding the work? I was a horrible student, and that's something I regret. But I finally picked hotel hospitality because it seemed like the easiest for me. I decided to do the internship in Hilton Head, South Carolina, which was so fun. You'll laugh at this. It was 110-degree weather, and where I was stationed was at a pool 20 minutes inland from the beach where we were all staying. And so all my friends would carpool back and forth, but I would rollerblade home on the highway. There was a sidewalk. I would rollerblade home in 110-degree heat every day and meet my buddies back at our condo that we had. And I just kind of laugh at those times. Like it just must be embedded within me that I just love that kind of stuff. I love that sort of cardio. But no, I never thought to myself, should I move here instead of a mountain town? After I graduated from college, I knew I wanted to live in a mountain town, and it was really deciding between Stowe, Vermont and a place called Lake Tahoe that I'd never been to, but I heard there was a body of water because I do like being near water. And so I rolled the dice and took my chances on Lake Tahoe.
Had you seen Tahoe in the magazines and the movies or anything within ski culture? Or were you even paying attention to that? Like, how did you know about it?
I knew about it because my brother was 4 years older and would always put on Blizzard of Oz, License to Thrill. And so I always saw the Greg Stump movies with Glenn Flake, Scott Schmidt, Tom Day, in Tahoe. And so I had always seen it through those avenues and thought, how cool does that look? But also I knew there was this gorgeous lake. No, I had never seen it though, besides that. And I don't even know if internet was a real thing back then. So I can't even say that I could Google it and see photos of it. I just purely went on the notion that I would love it.
Okay. Being that you were a ski racer, I doubt you were into ski culture too much other than your brother's movies, Blizzards of Oz and stuff like that. But the new school scene was booming. The freeride scene was evolving as well. And were there men or women skiers that inspired you, or were you not even thinking like that at that point?
I wasn't even thinking like that. I moved to Tahoe in my tight little descent suit. I mean, like tight, in my little teeny race skis. And I must have made an impression because all of a sudden I had Darian Boyle, who was just, part of that movement, and Kent Kreitler, who I owe so much to. They both really took me under their wing. I'll never forget when I had first moved here, we ran into Scott Schmidt because I was with Darian, I think. And I didn't have poles because I was working on the race team at the time, setting up race courses for Palisades, Squaw. It was called Squaw back then. But so I was so excited to meet Scott Schmidt. I fully chased him around with Darian with no poles and did whatever I could to keep up with him because I was just so enlightened that I was skiing with Scott Schmidt after all these years of watching him. But no, when I moved out here, I really was clueless about that whole environment, that whole movement. And then I saw it unfold in front of my eyes. I mean, you had Govey, you had Kreitler, you had McConkey, you had Darian, you had everyone at this mountain. And it was just so awesome to see on a powder day, every single line going down with this energy and the lift lines and this respect that every person had for these people. And that's something I miss now. I don't feel like that still exists as much as it did back then.
No, and thinking about you moving out there, did you know anyone in Tahoe, or did you just go out there blind?
I went out there blind. I did have a person I knew from college, and so I couch surfed on their couch, and they actually became good friends. They probably did their initial investigation on me, and they're like, okay, she's cool, she's mellow, we can let her live with us. We actually found a place together in Tahoe City that was a little closer, and I didn't have to sleep on a couch anymore. And so I befriended someone I knew back from college and then his roommate, and we became super good buddies. And then aside from that, I had gotten affiliated with Kip Garr and Patrick White from a skateboard crew that I knew back east. And so they took me under their wing too. They got me my first pair of Vocal Explosives, fat skis. And so I just feel like I had a lot of good people putting in an effort for me, not really snubbing me or making fun of me because I look like such a dork, a East Coast racer dork, but really seeing the potential that I had in my skiing ability, even though I had really never skied a powder run in my life until I moved out west into Tahoe.
Well, the people that you're describing are all East Coast. I don't know if they're all racers, but it's like Darian, Kip. They're all like
Yep.
East Coast kids that moved out west, and they're super nice people. So, of course, they're going to embrace you. But one thing that has got to be shocking to you is just the amount of snow that they get in Tahoe compared to what you experienced on the East Coast. Was it just almost crazy going from like 60 millimeter underfoot skis, staying on the groomers, to trying to ski in deep snow when you first get out there?
It was really, really hard. There's nothing else I can say except I'll never forget. I mean, I moved out here in one of the biggest storm cycles in 1999. We got so much snow, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, how was this fun? I was in the back seat. I couldn't figure out my balance. I remember really putting time and effort into trying to learn how to ski powder when I had first moved out here, and there was nothing easy about it. And then I look up and I'd see Kreitler and Darian just like bombing down the mountain. And now when I bomb down the mountain, because I know how to ski in powder, I definitely giggle and think back to that stage in my life of, how am I going to learn how to do this new discipline of a sport I've done my whole life, but I've never been a powder skier. And so I remember it was super challenging for the first week or two that I was learning how to ski, especially with the fat skis, which now I call training wheels because they're so easy for or points north, yes, I always recommend a fat ski. We call them training wheels. It just helps.
Now it's time for my first sponsor break, and I want you to buy all of your ski and snowboard gear from Peter Glenn Ski and Sports. Why Peter Glenn? Well, first and foremost, they're the little guy who's been getting people out on snow for over 65 years. They aren't trying to take over an industry by making a ton of branded products that compete with the brands they already sell. They're not trying to get you to stay at a hotel or sell you a vacation. Peter Glenn is about making sure you purchase the right products to ensure that you're going to have the most fun on the hill. And they have all the brands, all the products, and incredible deals both in-store and online. While other retailers focus on algorithms and AI, Peter Glenn is all about having the most knowledgeable staff that understands what you need. And if you've been following them on Instagram, they've been dropping some incredible pro tips that will make your time on the hill more enjoyable. At the end of the day, people have trusted Peter Glenn since 1958 because of their proven track record and all-around passion for snow and beyond. So if you ski, snowboard, inline skate, wakeboard, water ski, or need outerwear for your adventure, Peter Glenn Ski and Sports is your one-stop shop, and they offer free shipping on orders over $50, a hassle-free return policy, and they price-match reputable dealers. So please support this podcast and buy your stuff over at peterglenn.com. Next up, it's Elan Skis. I started telling you about Elan building a cult following in the States about 3 years ago. And if you're like me and heading up to the mountain on a weekly basis, I know you've been seeing more Elans. There's a reason for that. People who ski Elans notice that skiing on award-winning products made in what is considered the best factory in the world will make them a better skier. The product they put into the marketplace is second to none. I mean, Elan's a company that also makes luxury yachts, and they don't cut corners on materials or production. The difference in quality is noticeable. Walk up to any ski wall and compare the craftsmanship of an Elan ski to everything else on the wall. You'll see a difference in the fit and finish, but the most important difference is how they'll perform on snow. That's why Elan's been winning a ton of awards at the magazine tests, because they really do ski better. If you want to have more fun on the mountain this season, get on an Elan. You can find out about all things Elan over at elanskis.com. My final sponsor this round is Stanley, and if you haven't been hearing a lot about Stanley lately, you must be living under a rock. They've absolutely blown up in 2023, and everyone is talking about them. I've been telling you about how incredible their products are at keeping your drinks hotter and colder than anyone else's for about 7 years now. I mean, they invented the category in 1913, and while they always have done well, the world now knows that if you don't have a Stanley, you don't have the best. And I love having the best. Personally, I use Stanley pint glasses every single day, and I swear by them. And my wife and so many others can't live without their Stanley quenchers. And recently, I've integrated Stanley food storage devices into my ski routine. Instead of buying $20 burgers, we bring our food to the mountain and it stays piping hot in our Stanleys. And I end up saving about $70 a weekend not buying food. While that's rad, what's even radder is that Stanley offers Powell Movement listeners their biggest discount that they make available to the public. I'm going to save you 30% on all your Stanley products. Here's what you need to do to get that discount. Head on over to stanley1913.com, go shopping, and at checkout, enter the code SNOW30. That's all caps and the number 30 with no spaces, and you'll save that 30%. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast. I think it was McConkey or Hat Trip at one point that said, fat skis, fat tourists, they'll make you ski like a pro regardless, or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, how much do we owe to Shane doing the schmear turn and creating this kind of ski that just helps aid in making a turn and skiing in powder? I feel like we owe him a lot for just helping with that invention as well.
It's just a shame that he wasn't here to see it hit every level of ski and skier, because when he was alive, there was powder skis that had a lot of rocker in it, and that was about it. And then a year or two after his death, it's like everything has a little bit of rocker for the newer skiers, so their tips don't catch and the skis don't catch, and for everybody else, so it makes skiing a lot easier and more fun. So definitely a huge credit to him. But if the snow levels at Tahoe wasn't shocking enough, was it mind-blowing to see how good at skiing everybody else was at Tahoe?
It was, and everyone still is. I mean, you look up on a powder day and everybody looks like a pro in this place. I always say you're a small fish in a big pond because everybody is so dang good. It's so impressive. It really is. I just feel like this mountain, you know, whether it's us, Jackson, Whistler, it just creates this high level athlete of a skier, whether you're a ski bum working in the bars, being a snowcat driver, so you can afford this lifestyle. There's a lot of extremely amazing talent here. Yes, it still blows my mind more than 2 decades later.
2 decades later, you can see it as one thing, But 2 decades ago, can you describe what the culture of Squallywood was actually like and who the players were there when you got there? I know you named a lot of the names already, but like on a powder day when everybody's just frothing, can you describe that experience back then?
There's nothing like the vibe there on a powder day. It was literally electric. You had C.R. Johnson, you had Shane McConkey, you had Kent Kreitler, you had Darian Boyle, you had Jeff McKittrick, you had Aaron McGovern. It was just so incredible to see everybody bombing down the fingers, hucking middle knuckle. And then there was this bench outside Dave's Deli that's not there anymore, but it was called Cool Guy Bench. And you would always see them afterwards just hanging out there, kind of basking in their glory, knowing everybody's looking at them, giving them props for the runs that they skied, congratulating them on the day. And it was just the neatest environment. You know, you had Gogan Spraying, you had that whole generation as well that was coming into the jib style, Tanner Hall. It was just the place to go. And when it snowed, every single pro seemed to immerse out of the woodwork and came to Tahoe, whether they were in the backcountry, whether they were in the train park, whether they were going off the fingers. Everywhere you looked was just that culture emerging. You know, they had all the crazy outfits. Kreitler would do his hair all up and style it. And everybody had their own kind of distinct style. And then I'll never forget K2 doing that ad that mocked the CK, the
BK2.
cologne ad. Yes, yes. And that was, when I see that ad, that was just like perfectly describing what was going on in the industry and these heavy hitters that were at these different mountains. And it was just like they brought that attitude and that personality to Squaw Valley. And, you know, they rocked it. They were rock stars. I mean, they were truly the rock stars of the ski industry.
Yeah, it's a different kind of pro athlete these days than those days, it seems like, because they truly were put on a pedestal. And maybe it wasn't the social media just diluting everything. And it was like everything you saw from those guys, it was just something that you wanted to put on your wall. But it's crazy how it's changed. And I will say that every time I go to Tahoe, and it's really, I go to Palisades, but I just say Tahoe. When I go, it's usually for a big event, and people are always partying their faces off. And it's like they start early and they go late and they're fueled by who knows what. Did that blow your mind too? Like how hard people sent it off the hill?
It did blow my mind. And when I refer to anything now, I say Palisades. I say Squaw just because that was the name back then when all these people were there.
For sure.
So I'm respectful of the name change too. But the partying off the hill was crazy. I mean, I'm this East Coast, you know, prim and proper. Yeah, I drank. Yes, I did that kind of stuff. But I never did drugs or did anything crazy like that. And it definitely was a different environment in the party scene, you know, just trying to keep up. I mean, I remember I'd go to Vegas with Darian and just all of a sudden at midnight I'd be done and they'd just be starting their activities for the night. And so it definitely was a different level of everything. And honestly, it bit me. I'm not embarrassed to say this. It bit me in the ass. I'll never forget. I was partying one night really hard. You know, I was with Darian and that whole crew. We were at a place called Humpy's in Tahoe City. And I had way too much to drink. I all of a sudden realized it was going to be a powder day the next day. And I drove home and I got arrested. I got a DUI. It was a really unfortunate situation. And it molded and changed my life forever, where I was so thankful I didn't kill somebody. I was so thankful I didn't kill myself. I had to do the whole 6 months of, I don't even know what it's called, when you have to pick up trash and go to classes.
Community service, I believe they call that.
Exactly. Exactly. And, you know, I never was angry. I felt like I deserved that. And it definitely changed my outlook for the next 30 years of my life, where I never drink and drive now. I feel like I got off easy on that because I learned my lesson. I didn't hurt anyone. I didn't, you know, hurt myself. And I was able to learn from it and move forward. But I was a lightweight. I just couldn't keep going at that level. And the worst part was the next day was a powder day and everyone was calling me, where are you? Where are you? Meanwhile, I'm in jail, you know, looking like a hooker because like it was 80s night and like I'm still in the outfit. And so it was a really humbling reality check for me of what my parameters and what I could do and what I couldn't do. And so, you know, I feel very grateful for that situation in my life because it was a pivotal moment of when I just thought to myself, okay, you know, I have limitations and this is my limitation. And I just know now I take a taxi or, you know, if it's going to be a powder day, I don't go out. And so it was, you know, good. I feel like I learned a really good lesson. Everyone stayed safe from it and I got what I deserved and then some and did it with grace, hopefully.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Not many people would do that, so that's awesome. And then I'm going to get back to ski-wise. Like, who are your friends that convinced you to enter, like, your first ski cross race?
So I was living with Charlotte Motes at the time.
A badass.
Yep. Darian Boyle and Kreitler convinced me to do it. And so we trained, blah, blah, blah. We did this, we did that. I wasn't that great, to be honest. I really don't like people near me when I'm skiing. And so that part really got to me. You know, you're going off huge jumps and you got people to your side trying to take you out. However, I got very fortunate and my friend and I won the Red Bull Ultracross. And so that was huge. That was a huge step in the door. I had raced my whole life. I had competed my whole life. I knew I didn't want to compete anymore. And so I was able to, from there, it was just a good time in the industry where I wrote a list of A-list sponsors that would be my dream sponsors. And I submitted resumes to them and, you know, got great referrals from the people I've been talking about. And I was able to obtain all these A-list sponsors and was very honest that I didn't want to compete. I didn't want to do big mountain comps. I didn't want to do ski cross. I wanted to help with ski lines. I wanted to film for movies. And I got the support of, at the time it was K2, Helly Hansen, Comby. And so that kind of launched my career until this new path of being able to dictate moving forward and making a pretty darn good living at it. I was making 5 figures in the ski industry in my 20s.
That's incredible.
I think so too. For over a decade. And so I feel very grateful for that. And, you know, just to have the support of these amazing at the time it was team managers and you do fun trips and you'd all get together. And we created the entire line of K2 women's skis. We made the first ever women's fat ski, the Fat Love. And that was with Kim Rycombe and a few other ladies. And so just to have these incredible experiences with these incredible people was really a dream come true.
And before I dive into K2 stuff, because I am going to talk a lot about that, or a little bit at least, but is this also around the time when you're kind of, you know, like burnt out on competing per se? You've raced your whole life and ski or cross really isn't for you. And is this right around the time that you connect with Awesomeness and Wind Up Films?
Okay, so I had also done a big mountain competition with Jamie Burge. We were in Mammoth. So I did a few big mountain competitions too. Those were just fun. I mean, gosh, I don't know. I think I placed top 5 or whatnot. And I'll never forget, this was the start of my injuries. Jamie, we were looking at lines together and Burgie was like, if you go off that air, just be careful of the compression at the bottom. And sure enough, I go off the air, I fly off this air and I hit the compression and I land so hard on my back that I broke my sternum.
Oh.
I remember going to the hospital and the doctor said, no, we don't see sternum breaks from skiing, only when people hit the steering wheel going 80 miles an hour. But just in case, I'm going to give you an x-ray. And sure enough, I had a hairline fracture in my sternum. And so that kind of wrapped up the whole career of racing and competing and ski cross and big mountain comps. That was the end to that journey.
So that puts me right back in my timeline because that clears up a lot of stuff for me.
Yes, I forgot about that.
So you've got a broken sternum there. We're going to leave it at that. I'm going to go into the K2 part now. And with K2, there is the K2 Alliance and the K2 Factory Team. You're part of both of those programs. Each one was new and innovative for athlete marketing and skiing, I feel like. Can you describe what each team was and what your role was on it?
Yes. So we had this incredible director. I don't know what you call him, Jeff Ventura. He was running K2 at the time. My team manager was Mike Goot. They were both awesome human beings. Jeff Ventura had this vision that he wanted to create an alliance of women from all 5 different walks of life. You have the mom raising the kids, you have the empty nester, you have the free ride lady, me, you have Kim Rycombe, who's been around forever but kind of phasing out, and then you have the hot 20-year-old that's just an awesome skier that makes her living so she can ski all the time. And so we had this group of 5 ladies, and our job and our goal was to create an entire line for the K2 women fleet. And so we would go to Mount Hood every summer. We went to Saas-Fee, Switzerland. We would travel the world testing skis on K2, flying business class, getting wined and dined, having these incredible dinners, making this incredible ski line. And then the other side of it was with Mike Goot, who was our team manager, was on their factory team. And so I had this really great support from K2 on the both avenues. When, you know, I'd help make their ski line, but also if they had any filming requests or photo shoots and stuff like that, I'd also do that being part of the factory team.
And then with the Alliance team, I think there was like a 30-city shop tour. Did you get to go on that and kind of see how much of an impact you guys have when you're able to speak to like-minded women?
We did. We went on a huge tour. Every year we would go on a tour, starting back east and moving through the Midwest, connecting with women, skiing with women, answering questions, talking to shop owners. And that was really neat, just being on a one-to-one basis with women, because I've noticed women are incredible athletes, but they get intimidated. And so, especially when they're in the big mountains or just on skis in general. And so to be able to have that experience of making them feel good and comfortable and confident, get them on these skis, get them trying out this new line of stuff, because a lot of women hadn't tried the new ski shape or, a fatter ski. And so we really were there to embrace them. We had zero attitude. Our team was really nice and embracing, and we all had the common goal of getting more women excited about the sport. And I know for a fact that we did that. We increased sales by around 25% from that K2 line.
And I feel like K2 was the first brand to really look at women and say, hey, we don't need to shrink and pink it anymore. We need to make real product for women to go shred in the mountains. And that's what you guys did, even though some of you skied on men's products still.
That's right. And, back then it was the cool thing to do. You'd get a ski, but they would change the top sheet for you. I mean, I remember Darian skiing on an explosive with a K2 top sheet on it. And so back then you knew someone was really good when they were skiing on a men's ski that was being hidden to another version of a ski. And so I love that Fat Love. That Fat Love was great. Was it great when I was filming in Alaska? No, but that's okay. That's when I went on that made in a K ski or something different on the K2 line. And the ski industry has constantly told me, and I believe it now because I see it, there really isn't too much of a market for a huge, fat, big woman ski out there. It's just not the women that are buying those skis. The women that are skiing on those skis are getting deals on those skis. And so just to even help people get on something from going from an 86 underfoot to a 96 underfoot was a huge deal and a huge movement and a good thing in itself.
Okay. And then when were you able to actually quit working completely and survive solely on ski money? Did that happen like in your first few years of being a pro?
I would say within the first 2 years. I was raised by my father to really have the value of a dollar. And I was extremely good with knowing that and knowing money and knowing I had to work. And so for the first 2 years I moved to Tahoe, I worked my fanny off. I had 2 jobs. The second year, I just did everything I could to support myself and to ski as well. But I would say after those first 2 years, I was able to solely live off being a skier. For over 10 years, I was able to live off being a skier.
Nice. And then with ski travel, while people think of the life of a pro as always glamorous, I'm sure there was a lot of ski testing at Hood, wearing trash bags because of the rain. And what are those processes like? Is it fun or is it just totally miserable when you're doing that?
Now that I look back on it, I mean, it was a dream come true. It was when the industry had a lot of money. We would get not first class, but business. We would get taken out to gorgeous dinners. I mean, Kim Rycombe, if you know her, she has impeccable taste. And so we would always be at this like Ruth Steaks house, having this fancy dinner, and traveling with K2 was awesome. We did so much fun stuff. We went to so many nice places, and they really wanted our input on the skis. And so we would ski rain or shine, making sure we'd test stuff. The next day they would do whatever tweaks we needed on the skis so we could test the new product. And so it was a huge production where we had all the people there to make sure that we really were getting the ski that we wanted the next run and the next day. And I mean, there was definitely, a little drama with the girls, and sometimes we get on each other's nerves. We did a lot of stuff together. If I was home for 4 days, that felt like a long time. But at the end of the day, we all loved each other. We all had a lot of respect for each other, and we all started to learn each other's idiosyncrasies and travel needs. Kim loved staying by herself. And so I was a little bit of a bee on that at first. Like, why do you get the solo room? But now I realize, of course, she should get the solo room, and we can all be together. She's the experienced one. She's the one that's been around forever. And so it was just those attitudes that needed a little shaking out. And then once it did shake out was when it ended. And that was the sad part. Is I'll never forget Jeff Ventura telling me, Jess, when you're on top, everyone wants to get you. And so you always have to switch stuff up. You never can assume when you're on top that you're happy and comfortable. And so we had improved their sales 25%, and they broke up our team because they felt since we were on top, they needed to switch stuff around, and they formed a new alliance team. And no team since ours has ever made the progress or the increase in sales like the original K2 Alliance team did. And so that was sad, and I think everyone really appreciated their time together because when it was done, it was done. And it ended pretty abruptly.
Yeah, well, that was one role with your K2 experience, but another one is getting the brand exposure, and your first huge opportunity to do that is K2 buying you into a Warren Miller shoot in Alaska. And how psyched are you when you hear about this trip?
Okay, so Alaska was, because I remember this, when I broke my sternum.
It was weeks before.
I got a phone call saying we have a Alaska segment, but that was when I had moved to vocal. Because I started as a vocal carver girl. And then I went to K2, and then I went back to vocal.
Oh, I didn't realize that you had started with vocal, then went to K2, and then went back to vocal.
Or did I start with vocal? I can't remember. I might have started with K2.
I think you might have gotten a pair of skis from vocal through people in Tahoe, but I think you kind of got onto K2 at first. I mean, this is through my research, but this is your life.
I agree with you. Yes, so after K2 ended, I reached out to vocal and obtained an incredible relationship with them. And that was when, after I got hurt doing the big mountain comp and fractured my sternum, I got the phone call that we had a vocal photo shoot in Alaska at Points North.
It's time for my final sponsor break, and I can't tell you how much I love my gear from Outdoor Research. When I signed on with OR, I knew there wasn't an outerwear brand on the market that performs as well as what OR is developing. That's what happens when you test your gear in the absolutely terrible conditions that we can get here in the Pacific Northwest. Days in the mountains are always more fun when you're warm and dry, and I know my OR gear will always deliver that. I'll tell you, on cold days, I live in my cold front hoodie, which is hands down the warmest and most stylish puffy I've ever owned. And then when I get on snow, my snow crew jacket and pants are not only warm, but it's one of those fits where if you don't see me ski, I look like a pro. I'm so impressed with the style that OR has been bringing to the table lately. And off snow, they sent me some Feroci pants, which are now my daily drivers. Think stylish, lightweight, packable, do-anything pants with the right amount of zippered pockets and stretch to be the only pant that you'll ever need. I've been loving OR products since I bought my first OR rain jacket in 2000. And really, if you missed out on using my old discount code for OR products, well, I'm working on getting you a new code, but I can't promise anything. Sometimes you snooze, you lose. So check back for that. And in the meantime, head on over to outdoorresearch.com and check out why they're one of the fastest growing brands in snow and beyond. My final sponsor this round is Best Day Brewing. If you haven't heard of Best Day, they are hands down the best tasting non-alcoholic beer on the market. I enjoy Best Day for so many reasons. The flavor is the most important. I swear by the hazy IPA, the Kolsch, and the Belgian White. They all taste just as good or better than their alcoholic cousins. And I'll tell you, while I haven't quit drinking, when I go to the bar, after 3 or 4 beers, I usually feel like it's time for me to head home, and everyone thinks I'm lame. But lately, I have a new routine. I'll have a Best Day every 3rd beer, and it makes my night last twice as long. And we all know lasting longer is better. If you want to have your best day or night ever, or just enjoy a few cold ones at Après, grab a Best Day, and you can forget about the calories, forget about the alcohol, and forget about getting in trouble on the way home. To see all the flavors and order some beer, head on over to bestday.com. And if you're flying Alaska, you can now get a Best Day Kolsch at 30,000 feet. Those are my sponsors. Now let's get back into the podcast. At this point, you go to Alaska injured, and I'm guessing that it's your first time in the Chugach. What's your first impression, and is it nerve-wracking knowing that you have to go ski when you're hurt?
Well, I had already met Kevin, who had Points North and been there, and we had already been in a relationship, so I had been in the Chugach quite a bit. But what was very scary is normally sternums take weeks, months to heal. And so, the doctor said, I don't think you're going to be ready. It's in 3 weeks. There's no way. But my friend Jeff McKittrick at the time said, I eat cartilage from a chicken bone when I get hurt, when I break bones and when I pop out my rib. I get a chicken and I literally eat the cartilage out of it. And so I started doing this. I started eating the cartilage all over the chicken bone. And by miracle, I was semi-healed for our photo shoot in Alaska 3 weeks later.
Do you still eat cartilage from chicken bones whenever you get hurt?
No, but whenever someone does, I tell them that's what they should do if they poke out a rib or if they're having any sort of issue with that. I mean, it really did work. I got an x-ray, 3 weeks later, and the doctor said, wow, it's a miracle. It's slowly but surely healing. Here, you can see this. And so I wasn't 100%, and I definitely skied hesitant. I remember the Chugach had just gone through a wind event. And so it was definitely firm. And there really is nothing worse than being in Alaska in the Chugach Mountains when you're injured. It's a very vulnerable feeling. It's such a mass place and it's so beautiful, but it's also so intimidating. And it really, I don't recommend anyone going there that's injured.
Well, you were lucky that the crew that you were on, it was like an all-women's crew, which I would think makes it a little bit easier than having a bunch of dudes on the trip. But that's my take on it. Does it make it easier when it's all women?
It does, because Jen Berg at the time was a very good friend of mine. She still is a very good friend of mine. She's one of the most gorgeous skiers to watch. She still skis all the time. You know it's her because of her long black hair. But Jen had been awesome. She's a Tahoe girl. She'd been in the scene forever. She's so calm, cool, and collected that having her by my side was just awesome. She definitely helped my jitters. And when I was feeling, intimidated or when I was just not feeling good because I literally did still have a fractured sternum, she was really amazing to have by my side and just know I had this ladies crew with me up there supporting what I was going through.
That's awesome that you have Jen there. I think Charlotte was there as well to kind of help you through that experience. But how's the vibe different when men are on the chute? Like, what do men bring to the table that women don't, good or bad?
My only fight I've ever had with Tom Day and I have filmed together forever. He's a close friend of mine. I absolutely love him. But I will never forget, we were in Davos, Switzerland, filming for Warren Miller. And I was with two men and they wanted to go and hike up and do like the cool line. And I did too. There was enough room for all of us. And I remember Tom being like, no, Jessica, there's this gorgeous shot right in front of me, just a one-turner. And it was the one time I ever fought with Tom. And I was like, no, Tom, get one of the boys to do it. I want to go up there too and slash this line. And it was the only time to date that he and I ever fought. And I finally, against his wishes, hiked up with the boys. And the shot turned out awesome. I remember Warren even talked during it. But I think we're different with men. But again, I knew my capabilities and my boundaries. The guys are always looking at the gnarly, gnarly, gnarly line. And for me, that was fine. I didn't want to do the line that they were doing anyway. I think it's a really good yin and yang because there's so much terrain and 9 times out of 10, there's going to be something, comparable that maybe makes me feel a little better that I'd rather do than this line that makes me want to vomit. And so I think the difference is just the difference in what I experience, what they want to ski.
How about sexism in the mountains? I've kind of mentioned this, but do you ever get dudes trying to tell you what you can ski, or dudes trying to take your lines, or even worse, dudes trying to hook up with you on every trip?
I know this is a big topic in the industry, and so I don't want to get shot down for saying it, but I felt being a female actually helped my experience as being a pro skier. I never felt sexism or gender discrimination in running points north, in being a female big mountain skier, in film shoots. I mean, and nothing like that did I ever really feel like I was being discriminated against.
Did anybody ever take another guide's advice more seriously than your advice because you were a woman?
No. Nope. But I don't ever put myself as a victim. So I don't come across as feeling intimidated. And so maybe that shows to people, and at the time I was skiing really strong. So it's not like anyone could doubt to not follow me in guiding. I mean, you do have some European guides when I was on film shoots that definitely like to kind of act like they're the boss and like talk to the guys like they're their bros. But I'm pretty good at self-entertaining myself. And so I never took anything personally. I just was like, oh, good for you. I hate to be your girlfriend. I never took it too serious on those notes. And a lot of the guys at the time were wanting to go off cliffs. And, I filmed a bunch with Mark Abma just because at the time we were on Helly Hansen together and his lines were totally different than my lines because he would look at everything in a different way where he'd want to go off and find an error to do a spin. And so it was just, where I'd want to find an error just to go off and like straight air it. And so it was just a lot of different views and images of what line you wanted to ski per athlete. And I feel like when you're on film shoots, there's only 2 to 3 athletes. And so again, I felt like there was enough for everyone.
Okay. And while I don't really like to talk about relationships, I'll say that you met Kevin Quinn a couple years before we're talking about. He's an ex-hockey player who owns Points North, who founded it. He's, arguably just as adventurous or maybe even more adventurous than you. Was it like you meet this guy who's this good-looking hockey dude who's awesome and you're like, free heli time, count me in?
So I met Kevin and he courted me pretty hard because he had been dating my friend who fell in love with him and wanted to move to Alaska, buy a fur coat. And so when Kevin started asking me out, it was the summer after his first season. But I'm a very loyal person. Even though my friend never went with him to Alaska, he broke up with her. I still did not want to date him for this reason. And I would say, at the time, I didn't really give a flying fudge about heli-skiing. I didn't even know what it was. I just was not part of that whole Valdez era and, using coins to go heli-skiing.
Right.
And so Kevin courted me pretty dang hard. And 6 months later, we were dating. I went to Alaska that summer. Long story short, before I knew it, again, I was this good East Coast girl with, great credit. My credit card had been racked up with bills that he owed. He was in more debt than like anyone can even imagine. And all of a sudden I was part of this heli-ski operation owing money as well because it was his second year in business and he was in a lot of debt with his business. And so it was not all rainbows and butterflies like people would think at all in the first few years. It was pretty terrifying and it had a lot of stress and anxiety that came with it, dating Kevin those first few years.
Okay. And at this point, we could talk about Pontoon Peak because you're the first woman to ski that line, but we're not going to. We could talk about you blowing your knee in 2006, but we're not. We could talk about you being a guide at Points North, but we're not. I'm going to stick to Warren Miller because they do some baller-ass stuff. And what's the most luxurious Warren Miller trip that you've ever been on, where it's just like 5-star everything, and you're like, I can't believe I'm here?
Well, the most luxurious trip was probably not Warren Miller. So my friend Andre Benning and I were hired from the Swiss government to do a trip on the Glacier Express. And so it's this rad train that goes all through Switzerland, stops at all these amazing towns. And the Swiss government put us in these 5-star hotels at St. Moritz. I mean, you name it. Everywhere in Switzerland, we went and we got wined and dined. And we were able to stay at these hotels. We took photos during the day, got photos for their Swiss Tourism magazine. And so that was probably one of the coolest trips I've ever done. And I love traveling with Andrea Benning. She's such an amazing athlete and skier. And we had a lot of fun doing that. We were with Miriam Langwiller, who is a photographer from Verbier. And that was probably the most luxurious trip. I mean, when do you get to go to Europe and stay at 5-star hotels, get a free unlimited pass to the spas, get a free unlimited pass to the restaurants? That was pretty exciting. I would say for Warren Miller, doing a Davos, Switzerland film segment was pretty awesome. We went there and all of a sudden we were staying in a hostel and Tom Day got on the phone right away and made some phone calls. And within 5 minutes, we were staying at this adorable bed and breakfast where it was just, nestled in the heart of Davos. Davos has a ton of mountains all the way around. And it was just a special treat. We'd film all morning, then we'd have this incredible lunch looking out at the Alps midday. Then we'd film again. We'd have this incredible dinner. And that was just a super special treat. I'd say probably one of my most fun Warren Miller trips.
So that's one side of the spectrum. But then I'm sure you've been on some remote trips where it's maybe not luxurious, but it's like adventure travel to the max. And what's the best, like once in a lifetime skier trip that you've ever been on?
I've been to 6 continents, so that's pretty exciting. I'd say probably one of the most bucket list trips I went on was Ice Axe Antarctica trip. That was definitely a trip of a lifetime. The first trip we went on was pretty funny because it was the year that the boat didn't sail. And so we're all on the boat. I remember Chris Davenport giving me the patch for your sickness. So we all were on the patch. And then all of a sudden there's an announcement that the boat can't sail, that we have to wait 48 hours to see if they can fix the problem. And so we're all walking around super out of our mind on this like Dramamine patch. I don't even know what it was. Still trying to entertain guests because, our job is to make sure everyone's having a good time. So we're ski touring and whatnot. Hillary Nelson was there. I mean, it was just Ingrid was there. Kip was there. It was like truly a crew of a lifetime. Doug, who owns Ice Axe, was trying to promote this. And so Kevin was running all the guides, but Doug also asked a bunch of skiers to come and help promote it and help get the word out. And so it was just really a crew of a lifetime. And, unfortunately, 3 days into it, it was determined that the boat literally couldn't sail. There was something wrong with it. And so we never went. And come to find out, we come back next year and had like one of the most incredible trips I've ever been on, crossing the Drake Passage and skiing all this rad stuff in Antarctica. And so I would say that is definitely a bucket list trip that I still promote to this day as being one of the most raddest places on the planet. That's very hard to get to and worth it for sure.
Nice. Well, when you marry Kevin, you end up being part owner of Points North.
Yep.
And does that mean that you pull back a bit from pro skiing to focus on the business?
So prior to that, it was great because, I mean, I talk about the financials, but Kevin and I skied everything for 10 years. We literally would go in the helicopter and ski every single amazing peak you can ever think about. We had the best time for a decade, just slaying in the Chugach. Once I started getting hurt and things changed a little bit, I became a guide, and I was very honest with my sponsors. At that time, I really didn't want to film anymore. I had gotten hurt, I had crashed, I had gotten sloughed. It just was something that I wanted to kind of morph into the guiding. And so I guided, and that actually turned out incredible. I still will never forget my first group ever. To this day, we had the best day. We had 7 days in a row of sunshine, and they still send me Christmas cards. Like, I had the best group, and I had a great time doing that. And then I got pregnant. And so when I got pregnant, of course, everyone goes through that, like, I can do it all, but I really couldn't do it all. I couldn't run the office. I couldn't guide, and I couldn't raise a family. And I remember I had an all women's group, and flying back home, I heard about Katie Morrison, and I'll never forget hearing that Katie Morrison and her kids died in a plane crash. I don't know what did that, because at that time we had lost Kip, and we had lost CR, and we had lost all these people.
Tahoe just got hit so hard for like 6 years in a row.
Tahoe got hit so hard, and you have to have thick skin. I mean, you're running a heli-ski operation. But with the Katie thing, it really got to me. And I remember going back in that day, and I'm like, I'm done. I'm not guiding anymore. And so that was my last day guiding. And I was able to, once again, go to my sponsors and say, hey, release the money that you give me. I am getting out of this on my own. I would love if you continue to support us and support Points North. And so we still are partners with Helly Hansen. We're still partners with Vocal, Marker, Del Bello. I just feel so grateful for this timeline of having this incredible support throughout the decades, and then supporting me morphing through different stages of my life. You know, would I call myself a pro skier anymore? Probably not. But do I get free stuff? Sure, I do. And so I just feel really humble with the timeline that this is all taken. And so, right after guiding, I decided to just focus on running the business and making it successful, raising my family, and still doing Warren Miller stuff when I'm asked, or doing interviews, cameos, stuff like that, doing photo shoots if I need it, but not having that commitment of having to produce because someone's expecting it of me.
No, it sounds like these days you've gone from pro athlete to the Blonde Hammer. Can you describe how you got that nickname?
That's really funny. Who have you been talking to?
A lot of people.
So for a decade, when we were so broke, we had no money. We would pay our staff, and we didn't even have money to like fix a cracked window from going down the Elcan. I finally started thinking, why the heck are we stoking multi-millionaires on trips when we are like super broke? And so I had a mind change all of a sudden where I really came into Points North and started making it profitable. And we never took on a partner. We never had investors. You know, Kevin had this brilliant idea that he did of gold passes. We got money up front from people. We owed them 5 years of heli-skiing. That money went to our providers right away. That money was gone. We still, owed 5 years of the guest heli-skiing, but it was just a creative way to never have anyone else own it. And after a decade of Points North, all of a sudden the red became green. And I think that's where the Blonde Hammer came in, where I provide really good customer service. I immediately get back to people. I'm always empathetic. I'm always sensitive, but our rules are our rules, and our policies are our policy, and our price is our price. And, I definitely got firm on that because I was sick of being taken advantage of. And so the tides had changed in that aspect.
And when you say the price is the price, I kind of looked into it a little bit, and it looks like for a week of heli skiing, you're looking at $8,500 a head.
For 2025, it's $8,500.
Okay, this year was $7,500.
Actually, I'm sorry, it's for 2026.
Okay.
This year it's $7,500 for 2024.
Okay, so it's $7,500,
Yep.
and you guys highly encourage that people buy insurance because you never
Yep.
know what the weather is going to be up there. And the deal is you pay that rate, but if the weather's bad and you can't fly, the guest still pays the same price. Have you had people absolutely lose their minds when they don't buy insurance?
So I suggest trip insurance for a lot of reasons. I do not like trip insurance for any other trip except heli-skiing in Alaska. And trip insurance really covers injury prior to your trip, injury during your trip. If you have an accident out there, we're the air ambulance. We're the closest people. Every one of our aircraft is equipped with emergency rescue gear and an air ambulance, so to say. I also suggest it for death of a family member. I suggest it for natural disasters. So everything else is gravy. But for people, I pretty much highlight it, bold it. Dancing ladies pop out when I send information on this. If you don't get trip insurance, that's egg on your face. But what has happened over the last 25 years of running Points North is your confidence builds on your product. And so I am so honest with guests and so transparent. I say, you might not fly. You might not get in the helicopter once, and the more I say that, the more they say, here's my credit card. And so it's a rarity this day and age that somebody is surprised by that. I have noticed since COVID and just with the new generation that people don't necessarily look at their information the way that people used to maybe 10 years ago. But, I do everything on my side to make sure they understand what they're signing up for. They understand the factors of weather in Alaska. No matter who you go to, we all deal with weather. We all need sunshine to fly because we're on glaciated terrain above tree line, unlike Canadian operations. And if their goal is to ski every day, they should go to a Canadian operation. And so, again, we're really, really honest with that. And when guests don't fly, it's worse for us because not only have we paid for top-notch service, we've paid for those helicopters to be their rain or shine, but now we're giving credit. And so you explain that too, and guests are pretty understanding. And so, back in the olden days when we really needed business, and you don't necessarily be as honest as you need to be when you've established yourself. Yes, maybe we have people get angry, but over the last, 10 years, it's a rarity if we have a guest leave because they feel like they haven't been told everything up front.
One thing that you mentioned in there, you said something about COVID, and when COVID hit, it was like right when your season, I would think, is ramping up. It's like the second week of March in 2020 or something like that. Does that just kill a whole season of business for you?
COVID was horrible because I don't know if you've researched, but we've taken on a partnership with Points North. And so not only did COVID happen, but this was also during our transitional partner year of them deciding whether they wanted to be in or not. And so when COVID hit, not only what people don't realize is when you're going to an A+ operation, everything is prepaid for. And there's no negotiation in those contracts because it's a domino effect. If you don't pay your heli provider, they can't pay their bills. And if they can't pay their bills, it's a domino effect. And so again, rain or shine, our season's prepaid for. And so COVID hit, we decided to pull the plug midway through our season. The next day, the governor of Alaska deemed all tourist businesses shut their operation immediately. And so we had done it a day before that happened. Randomly, we had no inside data on that. And I had to call every single guest, and explain the situation to them. And you really can tell people's personalities when you have that conversation. And there was some ugliness that arose, understandably. I understand it was all about them, their trip of a lifetime, blah, 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 blah. But it was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do within Points North, 25 years of operations.
Because those people don't get their money back.
We had we did 50% credit, or we would help them with trip insurance claims. That's why you buy trip insurance. And so trip insurance got real weird after that. The good ones honored their policy. So the good trip insurance companies did honor their policy and paid their client back. And the ones that didn't, we worked with, we gave what we could do as the credit. And we were pretty on par with every other operation in Alaska in terms of what we could provide to stay in business and to make sure we were successful for the future. But it was hard times.
I can imagine. So the final part of this podcast that I want to talk about, I'll just call it the Heli Wars, because there was a time when Points North and many others applied for a permit for a new zone. You guys won out of the process and got that permit, but that's just the beginning of the story for some reason. Can you share more on what happened with that permit that was in like 2013?
Well, there's a permit that's been around forever. It's called the Holy Grail, and one operator in Valdez owned it. And Kevin always wanted to share it with a North and a South operator for really safety reasons and for the fact that it's so massive. My husband loves to include everyone. He's the most charitable person I know. He definitely never plays mine, yours. And so his goal was to share this massive permit, again, for safety reasons, if ever anyone needed anything, to have backup. The operator that owned it did not want to share it and got very protective of it. And so when the permit came back up, you get the permit for around 10 years and you reapply for it. We won fair and square. It got appealed over and over by this operator only to go to the highest level and have it get deemed a technicality on the Forest Service's part that had to get thrown out. And so anyway, when the permit came up once again, a couple of years back, it was that 3 operators would get it, which was great. That was Kevin's goal all along. And Points North was the number 1 recipient of it. And so we have this just amazing terrain, around our zone that you couldn't obtain it in a lifetime. And it really is the holy grail. If Alaska has a wind event, we still find blower, deep, dry, cold smoke, snow where the permit is. And it just allows for a lot more areas that we can operate in, places close by. We feel really lucky. We have so much terrain, and it just it's pretty magical, to know that there's more terrain than one could obtain in the whole lifetime is a pretty mind-blowing thing.
And that whole thing got a lot uglier than it needed to be, and not on your side, right? Like, it was like you guys are just trying to be nice people and do your due diligence in getting this permit because it's going to help your business. And then the other side maybe might have been unreasonable.
Yeah. I mean, Alaska is pretty wild, emotional roller coaster. I can't say this in confidence, but I'm pretty sure that we are the only ones that haven't gotten divorced, haven't gone crazy, haven't been just so overwhelmed with the pressure of running a heli-ski operation. I mean, you're keeping 90 people safe in the mountains every single day, in the mountains that want to eat you up. And there's really not a family-owned and operated heli operation since the inception like we are. And it literally drives people to go crazy. And that's all I'm going to say on that, because it's been a challenging navigation dealing with different personalities. And for the most part, everyone has each other's backs. I love NORAD, Majestic, Valdez Heli Ski Guides, and CPG and TML. I mean, we all are there for each other. When shit hits the fan in Alaska, you have to have your fellow operators having your back, because we're all in it together. When something negative happens in Alaska, it affects all of us. And, as Kevin always has said, I don't care what wave our guests surf. If they want to go try a different wave, that's fine. I just want people to come to Alaska and experience it. And so that's kind of been our goal all along, is just to have people come, whether they come see us, whether they go to Valdez, just to come and experience it, because there's truly no place like it. It's, as he says, Disney on steroids when you get it. When you get it, we're heroes. When you don't, we're zeros. and that's kind of the appeal of it.
So I'm sure that you and all your guides have seen so many amazing skiers firsthand. Who are the people that seem to always impress you or your staff? Is there 1 or 2 skiers that you're like, God, that guy's just so much better than everybody else?
We've had some incredible snowboarders also. I will never forget, we had Flo Orley and Mitch Todler and this guy, Uli, he's a Swiss snowboarder. They would come and they would camp out for a month. We would have them come. And the lines that they would do would literally blow my mind. I mean, we have photos of them all over our house. It was incredible what they would get themselves into and out of. So those guys were over the top impressive. I'll never forget Kent just slaying Sphinx, just skiing it in like 2 turns. Micah Black, he and Kevin long lined onto Gamblers, this really, really spicy spine.
Like they dropped them in off the long line?
Yep. Because you couldn't land on it. We had Carlene Jeffries, that was just this incredible snowboard girl who would come up every year with her husband, Dave Barley, who was a skydiver, base jumper. Gosh, I mean, I feel like we've seen so many people throughout the years. We had Ingrid come with Jess McMillan, and they skied just some awesome stuff. They just slayed it. They had a ladies trip out of it. We had Cody Townsend come for the 50-something project. He came back twice. Andrea Benning, Jan Hagen, Jamie Burge. I mean, everyone has just come and really had a fantastic time and blown my mind with the lines that they've skied and the fluidness of it. And You know, what I think a lot of people don't realize in Alaska is these athletes sit and wait. I mean, sometimes for 6 days at an end. I'll never forget Seth Morrison and Wendy Fisher came, and Wendy, I think it was a 10-day stretch we were down, and Wendy went out and had the best run of her life ever. She deems it the best run of her life. And so the amount of pressure that these people have having to sit and wait, and the anticipation and the emotional roller coaster buildup, and then have to go out and be standing on a line that they can't see over. All they have is this little Polaroid that they took, hoping that they're on the right line, hoping that they know where they're going. You know, it's just really impressive. There's a lot that goes into it, and people just see the final product, but we get to see the entire anticipation and build up. And it really is mind blowing what these people are doing.
How about famous people? Do you get celebrities coming out to powder ski?
There was a guy that was booked on a private. Do you remember, what was it called? Black something.
Black Mirror?
He owned the consultant to the largest security firm.
Blackwater.
Yes. He was the owner of Blackwater, and he had to cancel because I think he got into some legal trouble. You can Google that. I know he did. And that was the hardest thing I've ever had to deal with, because I had to still get the money that was owed to us. You know, again, we were just this mom and pa at the time. And this was a huge private that we had held the spots for and turned away guests. And he was well below the cancellation policy. And that was really challenging because, you know, every time I'd call and talk to the assistant and talk to him, I'd be thinking, oh my gosh, he knows probably exactly where I am. He could come and kill me at any moment. And, you know, God bless that guy. He said, I know what it's like to be starting a business. I'm not going to leave you hanging. And he paid us. So he was probably the most high profile non-guest that we got. We have some guests that currently come that I'm not going to say who, but they sold their business to Amazon for $1 billion. They are just the greatest guys. They're so humble. They're longtime clients. But in terms of super fancy movie stars, I always open the door. I mean, I think I've told Lindsey Vonn and Michaela Schifrin whenever they want to come and on us, we would always love to host people. But, you know, we're clean and we're basic and we're on Prince William Sound. We have a gorgeous lodge, a gorgeous view. But we're not a 5-star hotel. It's really a soulful and passionate, raw and organic experience that points north. And so I don't know if it would be for a movie star looking for A+ dining and lodging experience.
Fair enough. Well, that is pretty much the podcast. Now it's time for inappropriate questions. And I was able to get someone you know, a best friend of yours, your maid of honor, a person that knows you so well, to come up with 3 questions. I'm talking about the award-winning, the absolutely legendary pro skier, Ingrid Backstrom, to ask the inappropriate questions. And are you ready for question number 1 from Ingrid?
All right, let's bring it.
If I needed 12 tablespoons of butter for a recipe, how would you measure that out for me?
What a little rascal. All right, just to be fair, Mike, if you were to measure butter, how would you do it?
I would cut on the little lines on the butter.
Oh, screw. Okay, well, I guess everyone knows this fun little fact about butter.
Why? How do you do it?
I would literally cut it and put it in the measuring cup because I never took the time to see those little darn lines until Ingrid pointed it out to me. I owe Ingrid and our good friend Sarah Mahoney a lot because they truly taught me about baking and cooking. And we used to do this thing called the Bitches of Baking. And I will never forget, I'm sitting there cutting the butter and putting it into the measuring stuff. And they're like, what are you? I mean, they're so nice. Ingrid's like, so what are you doing? Is this a new way of measuring that I don't know about? You know, totally honest. Like Ingrid is never mean about that. And it was then that she kindly pointed out that they made it easy for me and that they put lines in the butter showing me 1 tablespoon, 1/4, 1/2. And sure, that really simplified my life, that one.
All right, so we will go with question number 2.
Can you tell me about an incident where you went snowmobiling and you maybe didn't totally know what you're doing, and maybe the people that took you out didn't totally either, and what happened?
Oh, that's a good one. She's got a good memory. All right. So to go to your question that you asked me prior, I have never felt gender discrimination in the ski industry, except one of these moments. This situation did make me raise my eyebrow. I was in Utah and we were doing a huge Helly Hansen shoot. They had their entire team. They had Sarah Burke, all the jibbers.
They were huge back then.
It was huge. We had so much fun. We had like as much fun, if not more, than the K2 team traveling around. It was awesome. We had our whole Big Mountain skiers, snowboarders. We had our whole chip crew, and the Big Mountain crew was doing backcountry stuff for the first 5 days. Well, I actually had a sled. I knew kind of how to snowmobile. I wasn't that great, but I knew how. But our team manager, Gary Winberg, who I absolutely love, deemed that Jessica is the only one that doesn't get the sled and that she will be with whoever else. So the first day I get on with Brandon Ruff, who was like a professional snowmobiler. I think we went Mach 1000. It was the fastest, craziest experience of my life.
Uh-huh.
It was really fun. I did a huge, probably the biggest air I've ever done. We rode out that day, but thankfully Brandon couldn't come the next day because it was definitely a little too, I was so nervous. I just put my head in his back. I was behind him with my arms around him. I couldn't even look up. We were going so fast. So the second day, he wants me to go with Stian Hagen, who Stian is from Norway. He lives in Europe. I really don't even think he knew how to drive a car. I don't even think he had his license at the time. And so I kindly, Stian was my buddy. We like joked around so much, but I was like, no, I don't think Stian and I going together is a good idea. I really don't. So I go with Gary, our team manager, who also doesn't know how to drive a sled. He's a Seattle guy. That's a great skier, but like he doesn't get the opportunity to go sled access. So we're in the backcountry. He goes up a big hill. Again, I'm on the back holding on. He turns around and he doesn't make it. And so we crash into a tree. So I'm like, Gary, can I please have a goddamn sled? Like, well, this is starting to kind of feel weird here. Like, why don't I get the sled? And all these people that you included get one and I don't. Like, let's go on the back of mine. That didn't go over well. So the next day I get volunteered to go with Sheen Campos, who's a snowboarder, he's from Canada.
He's a legend. And
he's like a freaking legit snowmobile rider. He is like, you are not going on the back. We are going to tandem.
Which is crazy.
I've never really tandem, and we're going 8 miles into our zone. So within 45 minutes, my arms are so tired. I'm like Gumby trying to hold on with Sheen Campos. He goes around a corner so fast that I literally it rips out of my hands, and I cartwheel down the entire slope.
Oh.
I severely have dislocated my thumb so bad it's like grotesque. They have to call in the ski patrol from Snowbird, who have to cart me all the way up because we're in the backcountry, but they can still access it. They get me down to their emergency clinic where they cannot relocate my thumb. They cannot adjust it. They have 5 people holding me down while they're trying to manipulate my thumb. And they finally said, you have to go get surgery. You can't have any Advil because you're going to have surgery. So I start to go down to the hospital, and there was a huge bus crash on Little Cottonwood. And so we got hung up for 6 hours. By the time I get to the hospital, I'm like delirious in pain. And the doctor happens to be a skier, knew who I was an incredible person. And, we kind of talk about it. I wake up, I have a cast on that he's so excited to tell me he molded to my ski pole. So I have a cast molded to my ski pole. The next day I'm flying to Alaska. And it was actually that trip to Alaska that Andrea Binion and I were the first women to ever ski Pontoon Peak. So I ski Pontoon Peak with a cast that barely could hold onto my pole, all from this snowmobiling situation in Utah with the Helly Hansen crew. And thankfully, I loved them all so much. Sheen felt really bad. He'd call me once a month, just profusely apologizing. But it wasn't his fault. I just seen the whole thing as like a funny situation that sometimes the girl doesn't always get the biggest straw when you're on a photo shoot.
We're going to go into question number 3, and here we go.
If you need to take a sleeping aid, a medically approved doctor prescribed sleeping aid, what is an appropriate time to take one, and what is a not appropriate time to take one?
Oh, Ingrid's memory is so good. Isn't she sweet? So I was kind of having a rough time in my life. It was just some personal stuff going on. And I remember her getting me out of Tahoe, being like, let's go. We're going to go to Crystal. I've lined up this awesome thing. We're going to go fly in a helicopter with the owners and stay at my parents' cabin. And I was having a really hard time sleeping. So I had some Ambien prescribed. I don't know what the hell happened, but all I know is I think I took one at 5 a.m. and we were supposed to be up at 6:30. And you really know your true friend when she makes sure that she guides you through the day of delirium, doing the best she can to not let anyone know that you're so freaking out of it because you took an Ambien at the wrong time. And I will never forget that moment of, having her mom and dad there and just her helping me function that day where I really, really messed my timing up. And yeah, thankfully I have no Ambien in my life because that thing can be deadly if taken at the wrong time of the day.
Yeah, 5 a.m. is not the right time to take a sleeping medication.
That's right. No, it sure isn't. And just hope if you do that you have a really good friend like Ingrid that's going to make sure you're okay.
Okay, so that was Inappropriate Questions, and that's our podcast. And your story is a cool one. It's like you never planned on being a pro skier. You were a ski racer who realized your talent outside of the race course when you landed in Tahoe. Then you went pro, filmed a bunch, then married into being a ski industry lifer who skis more powder than almost any pro ever gets. So not bad for an up-and-coming ski racer from Connecticut. Thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's been fun.
So that was time with Jess Sobolowski-Quinn, and what a cool story she had making it to the pro level. It was cool because she didn't even try. She moved out west for the mountains, met the right people, and then she marries into a heli-ski operation where she comes in, whips everyone into shape, and makes them profitable. So Jess's story is a story of success, and the other story that she had that would have been fun to chat about a little bit more would have been all about the heli wars. But if you know anything about what went down between all the Alaska heli operations over that permit, you'll agree with me in the idea that Jess said just enough to not cause any more problems in the whole heli industry, and that's probably a good thing. So I'm not going to discuss it anymore. That's the show for this week. At this point, thank you for listening, and I'll be back in the States with a brand new episode for you on Monday. I just need to figure out who that's going to be. Regardless, this is the point in the show where I want you to listen to my sponsors' ads and buy from them. I only work with the best in the business, and they are Outdoor Research, Stanley, Peter Glenn Ski and Sports, Best Day Brewing, and Elan Skis. Have a great week, everyone.